Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Emily. Hi, Nina. Hello, Art. Beverly, so good to have you. Patty's here. Darshana is here. Oh, my entire heart. Welcome as you all arrive into this space. Taking a moment to feel your connection to your healed, wise, and well ancestors, checking in with yourself on this deep ancestral level, and just consciously tracking what has been unfolding in your life over the past few days since we opened this ceremonial container. I'm so excited for Jocelyn to share with us. So I'm going to pin you and spotlight you. Hello, Jocelyn. Okay, let's make you
Muted.
spot.
There we go. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Hi, Tori. I'm so excited to be here with you all.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited too. Jocelyn and I first met about 7 years ago when I was doing my very first online event like this. And we've stayed connected, and it just feels incredible to have you, Jocelyn. And I'll do a proper introduction, but I just wanted to share my deep, deep gratitude for the ways in which we are woven and how our paths have unfolded since that time, and how you are such a deep student of the Egyptian mysteries, and how I am now studying in those mysteries as well. It's just so beautiful to feel this web of our connection. So I'm
So
so
beautiful. So beautiful. Yes, I know you and I have been holding the light in so many ways these 7 years. So it's just wonderful to talk to you again and see all the interweaving and the gathering you've created here, Tori, is just so beautiful. So many amazing people coming together. So deeply honoring your work here. So beautiful.
thank you. All right, everyone, and yes, feel free, use the chat, share what's alive for you. I am so excited. Let's dive in. Welcome to Ancestral Wisdom Council, where we sit with lineage holders, wisdom keepers, elders, and ancestral storytellers from cultures all over the world as they share their teachings and wisdom. I'm your host, Tori Feldman, the founder of Sacred Ancestry. The intention of this council is to connect each of us with our own inner ancestral wisdom council, to the wise and well ones that live within your lineages, not only your blood lineage, but also the star lineages and your soul lineage, forming a deep, rich tapestry of ancient wisdom that lives within you. And of course, to remember and honor these ancient lineages of the earth as they are represented in each one of our incredible speakers. I am so honored and excited to share Jocelyn Starfeather with you today. Jocelyn is a visibility and thought leadership coach for visionary entrepreneurs, a spiritual alchemist, an astrologer, and founder of Sacred Planet. She shares shamanic and ancient wisdom to guide courageous seekers in co-creating a revolutionary new world in alignment with Mother Earth and the vast intelligence of the cosmos. After a successful 15-year corporate career working in finance for major multinational companies, Jocelyn was thrust into a deep spiritual awakening. It was that awakening that turned her life upside down, and from which she emerged with a powerful understanding of how to use her intuition and healing abilities, aspects of herself that she'd never had access to before. She dove deeply into earth-based and shamanic practices. She studied alongside elders and wisdom keepers ever since. And she's extensively studied ancient civilizations, especially cultures where the goddess held a strong presence. And she has spent profound and life-changing time in the ancient temples and pyramids of Egypt. All of this and so much more lives inside this incredible woman. Jocelyn, I am so excited for you to be here. Welcome. You're muted.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, thank you so much, Tori, for the beautiful introduction. Just truly an honor to be here.
So incredible. So, before we dive into ancient Egypt, which I know is the majority of our time together, I would love to hear about your own lineage of blood and a little bit of how you have been guided onto this path of the ancient Egyptian ways.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's been so magical and synchronistic and unexpected. Wow, I'm thinking where to begin. As far as my own blood lineage, I am German, English, and Irish. So deeply honoring these ancestral roots here. And it's so interesting and fascinating that, the more I learn, certainly the Irish, the ancient Celtic peoples were deeply connected with ancient Egypt, and the knowledge was shared across those lands. And so, yeah, fascinating to consider those possibilities, right? Yeah, I have different stories I could tell about how I came to be on this path, but there is one that really stands out that's been very, very powerful. And so I was um, really quite in the mainstream world for many years there, and working in corporate. I worked for Mercedes-Benz and Cadbury and these big companies, and um, when my first daughter was born, which was in 2010, that was my awakening moment. And I can remember holding her in my arms, and when she was maybe 3 or 4 days old, and just gazing into her eyes, and this new understanding, like it was like a new reality washed over me, where I realized I had been living my whole life doing and pursuing things that others told me I should do and pursue. So my career, moving up the corporate ladder, I did all the things we're supposed to do. I went to school, I got my bachelor's degree, got my master's degree, got a good job, got another good job, moved up the ladder, all these things, right? And I realized that this was not in alignment with my soul, this life that I had been living in so many ways. And so it was quite a frightening moment for me, of realizing I needed to change everything, and not knowing how that would ever possibly happen. But also just such a powerful realization that I want to model for my little daughter here a true life, a free life, a life that is lived by following my soul. And so that's what I've done ever since. It was not easy to make that shift. And I really went into quite a dark night of the soul for 2 or 3 years after that, trying to find the path, because I had no idea what the path would be. And I was really quite immediately led to ancient wisdom and indigenous wisdom. Um, it was at first, I was guided toward Native American indigenous wisdom, and that is really what started me on my journey. And I'm so deeply grateful for the teachers and the elders that I worked with in those lineages. So deeply honoring those teachers along my path. Um, I have been interested in Egypt since I was a little kid. I recently unearthed at my mom's house this cool little art kit of, how to draw the hieroglyphs and how to draw the different gods and goddesses from when I was 12, it looks like, is when I was working on that. So been interested in it for a long time, certainly a calling of my soul. The first time I actually visited Egypt was in 2021. And it was very synchronistic forces that brought me there at that time. And that put me in touch with my teacher there, who is Patricia Alyan Lehman. She is a wonderful and amazing and magical woman who studied with the late Hakim Abdel Alyan and learned so much from him and his indigenous Egyptian lineage. And so I've studied with her extensively now, and I've led 2 tours with her and been on 3 other of her tours. So I've been to Egypt 5 times now. And every time has been completely life-changing. It's just fascinating how we continue to evolve, we continue to expand and grow into the fullness of who we are. And Egypt has been a major catalyst for me in those ways every time that I go, in a completely different way each time. It's really fascinating. And I have developed such a deep connection with the Neteru, the gods and goddesses of ancient Egypt, and the temples there, and the texts and the hieroglyphs that are on the walls there. And something that's really special about Egypt is that they were very prolific in their writing, right? Every temple is so many multiple texts full of ancient wisdom. And the temples that are still standing today Many of them were constructed between 1300 BC until about the year 0, or so. And the thing is that the knowledge, the wisdom, the texts that are in the temples are actually not only that old. They are from the temple that was on that site before that one, and the temple that was on that site before that one, and so on down through the ages, because the Egyptians were very careful to align each temple very specifically to particular stars and constellations. And they were aware of the precession of the equinoxes, which I'll say more about soon. So they knew that about every 2000 years or so, these alignments were significantly changed. And so they would take down the old temple and they would build a new temple in its place, but carrying forward the wisdom and the texts and the knowledge that was held in the previous one. So it's incredible to think we can walk through Dendera Temple today or Edfu Temple today, and that what is written there is not only 2000 years old, but probably 6 or 8,000 years old, or maybe even more. So I'll pause there, but that gives a little bit of the story.
So incredible. And thank you for naming that many of the temples and sacred sites that we know, both in ancient Egypt and in many places all over our earth, are usually built on top of the old sites of older temples. And this is another one of those layers of lineage. Is it's not only about the temple itself, it's about the codes that the earth is carrying, the prayers that have been transmitted there, and about the energetic intersections of ley lines on our planet, the dragon lines, and also the where the natural water flows or where it comes from the earth. These are very often the spaces that temples are held. And so thank you for anchoring that here into this space. And a question we have in the chat, which I'm also so curious to hear more about, is how the Celtic lineages and the Egyptian lineages were connected. I have read about it, but I'd love to hear it through your own experience and your own studies.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a lot of specific details I would love to give that I don't have right in front of me right now, right? But there we have much evidence that for example, the Orion constellation, which was so important to the ancient Egyptians and will be in some of what I share about today, is reflected in many of the temples or the mounds or the different sacred sites in the Celtic lands. We also, there's a lot of imagery in Egypt about of barks or boats, right? And so we have evidence in various different ways of the Egyptians traveling to the Celtic lands, the Celtic people traveling to the Egyptian lands. So there's a lot there. Now, this is not something that is my specific area of expertise, so I don't want to. I wish I could say more details about it, but I don't have it readily available. I know that Peggy Moore is somebody who studies this extensively. If you'd want to check out her work, she has some amazing evidence and connections. Also, Freddie Silva has spoken about this extensively. So really amazing what I've seen from both of them.
So beautiful. And for anyone who's wanting to open to a text that is actually channeled, and I don't read tons of channeled texts, just to put that out there. I'm very discerning. But there is an incredible channeled book that's called Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, which many of you have probably heard about and read, that speaks at length about the relationship between the Celtics and the Egyptians. And a lot of it had to do with the Library of Alexandria and the exchange of scrolls and sacred texts between their cultures and between their peoples. And it said, I've also learned this through my other teacher, Isis Indria, that when one wanted to gain access to the Library of Alexandria, which of course was in ancient Egypt, that you would bring scrolls from your own culture, from your own teachers, from your own traditions, and you would use that almost as a key to enter into the temple. So it was a place of cultural exchange, of deep exchange of these ancient wisdoms of many different cultures. And there were also scribes, and I feel very connected to the energy of the scribe. It's one of my main archetypes that's so burning and passionate and alive in me. And so I just want to take a moment to honor the scribes, the wisdom keepers, the Library of Alexandria, and also just to name that there's such a grief that I feel so many of us hold, that we are here healing in this time of the burning of this great library. And so I really want to honor the ancient wisdom that may not be written anymore, that we may not have access to anymore, but that lives within our bodies and that lives within the earth and that lives within these sacred sites and these temples of Egypt. And as we saw yesterday from Robert Edward Grant, how these temples are connected to all of the other sacred sites and pyramids all around the world, and Orion's belt and these constellations, we are able to remember and receive these codes, and also to deeply study what we do know, what has been remembered and carried on through lineage by these wisdom keepers. So that's my little bit that I'll contribute on that topic. And let's dive into this incredible topic of the precessional cycle, or the great year calendar in ancient Egypt. So, Jocelyn, I'd love to hear, for those of us who haven't heard these words, who have no idea what this is, what is the precessional cycle or the great year calendar?
Yes, this is such a fascinating topic and area of study. So we know astronomically that we go through these 24 to 26,000 year cycles. And the reason that this happens is actually being debated right now. There was an original theory of precession, which was that the Earth has a wobble. And so as we are, we're flying through space, we're going around the sun is, traveling through space as well. And as we wobble on Earth's axis, that northern axis then is going to be pointing to different North Stars at different times all around this 24 to 26,000 year cycle. But every 26,000 years or so, we come back to the original North Star. So this can be measured by looking at which star is the North Star at this particular point in time over, every 26,000 year cycle. It can also be charted by looking at where the sun is rising on the vernal equinox, so on the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. And so this cycle can be divided by 12 into 12 segments that are about 2,150 years each. And that's what I was speaking of when I said about every 2,000 years, the Egyptians would take down the old temple, build a new one to come into the new age and the new alignment that they were entering into. So the sun right now is rising on the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, right on the line between the constellation of Pisces and the constellation of Aquarius. For the last 2,150 years, the sun has been rising in the constellation of Pisces. We've been in the age of Pisces. And for the next 2,150 years, it will be rising in the constellation of Aquarius. So this is why we say we're moving into the age of Aquarius. It's quite literal. It's a scientific fact that this is where the sun will be rising on the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere for the next 2,000 or more years. Now, this is really significant that the ancient people all around the world, on every continent, so we see this in the Mayan calendar, we see this in the ancient yogic Vedas, right? The Veda cycles. We see this in the Sumerian text. We see this in Egypt, and I'll show you some images of the ceilings of the temples that reflect these vast 26,000 year cycles. It's incredible that the ancient people were able to detect this, and it points to their really amazing astronomical capabilities, because these changes are over such a vast span of time that the degree of the North Star, for example, or the change in the degree at which the sun is rising only changes by 1 degree, okay, 1 degree of the zodiac every 72 years. So that's essentially 1 degree every human lifetime. So these records had to be kept over many, many, many multiple generations in order for them to develop the accuracy of tracking these cycles that we see in their calendars, that we see in the Mayan calendar, that we see on the ceilings of the Egyptian temples. It's so fascinating. So they were very adept. They were very masterful at their astronomical knowledge. Now, I do want to point out, I had mentioned the old theory of precession, or the one that will be in any of your textbooks, or any of our kids' textbooks today, is that the Earth has a wobble. Now, the new theory of precession resonates so much more with me, and I think it will with all of you as well. And this has been put forth by Walter Cruttenden, and it's based on a book, The Holy Science by Sri Yukteswar, a yogic researcher. And so this theory says, instead of the Earth having a wobble, because actually there's now evidence that there's not a wobble, um, instead of that, what is actually happening is that the Earth is part of a binary star system, okay? So that our sun and another star are in a relationship where they are rotating around one another. And so what this would mean for the theory of precession is that it's reflecting that here on the Earth, we are rotating around the sun, and the sun is going around this other star. Vast, vast, distances in space that we're covering. And that where we see the north of our Earth pointing to the North Star, or where the sun is rising, changes over time because we're actually moving through a different part of the Milky Way galaxy. So when we go through certain parts of the Milky Way galaxy, we might experience a higher frequency energy, right? And we might be rising in our consciousness at that time. And then other parts that we're traveling through might have a more difficult frequency or a lower frequency. And we go through a more difficult time in human history, or we experience cataclysms or whatever it might be. And there's a lot of evidence for this. So it's a fascinating new theory and feels much more connected with what's actually happening for us.
It is so incredible. Thank you for sharing this transmission. And I'm really, what's landing most deeply for me in this is the generational wisdom that needed to be studied and passed down for many, 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 many generations to be able to track these cycles with such accuracy. Like, if we could all breathe that in, let that in, honoring of these traditions, that this is true lineage, this is true ancient wisdom, for something to be studied and passed down for generations and generations, and for us to now be able to receive today, it gives us such insight into how these lineages operated, how their sacred studies were honored, and how the records were kept. So just so much in this potent share, but that's for me what's resonating the most. And why did so many different ancient cultures know about this specific 26,000 year cycle? You spoke to the Mayans, but what would you say is the thing that weaves these all together and allows for these ancient cultures to all be connected in this way to this understanding of what's happening in the stars? Where when most of us, me included, look up at the stars, I would never even know how to begin to track what's happening up there. Like, these are true ancient studies of astronomy and of the sciences. So I'd love to hear more about this cross-cultural wisdom.
Absolutely. Yes. So when the ancient people looked out into the cosmos, they saw all the forces of creation, right? They saw the creator, the stars, all of the black holes birthing, new stars. I mean, the forces of creation are just incredible that we are a part of. The same forces that are out there, rotating the planets around the suns, are the same forces that are ensuring that our hearts keep beating and that we continue taking in each breath, right? These are the forces of creation. And so the ancient people knew that as they looked out into the cosmos, they were looking at divinity, right? They were looking at this higher consciousness, higher intelligence that is guiding us at every moment. And so they knew that it was important to align what we're doing here on Earth with what we can observe and what we can see is happening out there in the cosmos. And it just makes sense. It gives me chills, every time that I talk about something like this, because um, it's funny to think from our modern perspective, but really it would be foolish to design a city or to build a structure or to plan our lives without consulting that divinity, right? Right. And so they knew that. So they were incredibly tuned into these vast cycles. And they knew that there were certain times that are the proper time to lay the foundation for a new temple, or the proper time to celebrate a marriage, of the king and queen joining the lands together, right? Or the proper time to honor the gods and goddesses. And they really lived their life in deep connection with that. So the priests and priestesses held many roles, but one of them being astronomers and astrologers, because they needed to be connected. Now, the other piece here is that with their incredible observations of the cosmos, they could see that these cycles were important to pay attention to in the big picture as well, because they could see that on every half of the precessional cycle, so every 12 to 13,000 years, there's a massive shift in what is happening on Earth. So these 12 to 13,000 year cycles, as well as the 26,000 year cycles, are the times when we see the ice ages begin and end over the vast historical timeframes, right? And so other major events have occurred. And we know now, we have geological evidence that about 12,500 years ago, so half of the precessional cycle ago, something occurred that is called in the science and academic fields, the Younger Dryas period. And this was a period of great change. It was the ending of the last ice age. And it was a time when a major cataclysm occurred that created what is written in the Bible and the Sumerian text as the Great Flood. And so this is really significant for us to pay attention to, because we are now, that was in the age of Leo, okay? And we are now entering into the age of Aquarius. And the ancient people in the Mayan lands and the Egyptian lands, everywhere, left messages for us in their temples. They left messages for us in their stone circles to notify us now that this is an important time. Once again, we are now entering into a time of great changes. And the opportunity that we have now is to remember who we really are, right? To remember who we truly are. And we have the mythologies from the civilizations that came before that great cataclysm of 12,500 years ago. We have the mythologies. We don't have the structures, because so much changed geologically and as far as the water levels of the oceans and everything at that time, that evidence was either destroyed or is still hidden from us. But more is being discovered. Göbekli Tepe is one clue there. This is a temple that's 11,500 years old in Turkey. That could be a whole other topic we could get into. But we have these myths that have been passed down to us. For example, the Egyptians and Plato, have passed down these codes of Atlantis, right? We know in the Pacific Ocean, we are aware of Lemuria or Mu, right? These previous civilizations, they did exist. They were in the previous cycle before this one that we're in. And so we know that if we raise our consciousness now, if we don't make the mistakes that maybe people made in the past, we will have a huge opportunity at this time, right? We don't have to go through another flood. We don't have to go through another cataclysm. We can expand and open our hearts and open our minds to the incredible opportunities coming forward to us. And so it's incredible to see some of the prophecies that tell of 1,000 years of peace, right? And these other beautiful stories of what is possible and what is truly becoming available to us at this time. So the message from the ancient ones is pay attention. Now is important. The decisions we make, the choices we make are so important for the future of humanity, for the future of our beautiful planet, and the next 7 generations of all species.
It is so incredible to reflect on these cross cultural mythologies like the Great Flood and the way that that also intersects with science and our understanding of the different ice ages and just this ancient wisdom that so many people aren't diving deep into but have this curiosity around. It's like there's this switch that's that's there that for some people goes switch and they're like, oh, wait, I was really into ancient Egypt as a child. This is something I've seen in myself, something I've seen in others. There's something that's in us when we're young where there's this fascination with ancient Egypt that's so common. And it's like our souls remember something. And then as many of us grow older, we're in a society that relegates that to the world of, oh, myth means imagination. Myth means it wasn't real, right? Myth means that it's just some story. Like, for example, Atlantis. A lot of people would not believe that that's something that actually existed, and Lemuria, etc. And I had a really powerful conversation with a friend recently. She's deep on the shamanic path, and she was like, I don't really get myths. She's very earth based. She's like, I don't get it. Like, why these are all things that didn't really happen, right? Like, why is it important to learn and study myth? You seem really into myths, Tori. And I was like, oh my God, I could talk about this for an hour. But what I will say is these myths, these mythologies, these stories of all of these ancient cultures all had something in common. They are living transmissions of stories and they hold deep, potent wisdom. And so many of these myths are stories of what actually happened in the archetypal creation stories that brought our world into existence and the bigger story arc of what was moving through humanity during a certain era of time that's been turned into a myth or a story with different gods or goddesses or heroes, etc., so that we can understand and receive the transmission of the wisdom of those times. So for those of us who are like, well, did it happen? Did it not happen? If we let that go and we allow ourselves to receive the sacred transmission of these myths as the oral tradition of the storytelling, we understand that there's so much in it that we're not meant to understand, that these are things that are meant to be received. And each time that you listen to a myth, like in the Native American traditions, for example, I learned this from Jamie Sams, who's from the Seneca tradition in Native America. She shares that the storyteller was a very sacred role in the Native American tradition. And that storyteller would inherit the stories from another storyteller. So these are actual lineages of storytellers where these stories are passed down through time, and very often from time before anything was written, right? These are cultures where oral history is how it's transmitted, and that is also for a reason that many of the things weren't written down from these times. They're meant to be transmitted orally to keep the story alive. We keep stories alive by telling them, by interacting with them on deep levels within ourselves. And that storyteller would feel into the entire village, into the entire community, what story is needed right now that's the medicine this community needs. And sometimes that story wouldn't be obvious to what's happening in the village, but it would work on this very deep archetypal level that awakens certain things in certain people. And each time that that story is told, it's told a little bit different. It's told from another perspective or with different energies, different transmissions, because each time is like a key that unlocks something different in the listener. So the first time you hear a myth, you might be like, oh, I relate to this character. The second time, oh, I really relate to this teaching right now. And so they are kept alive through communities. So I really wanted to weave that into everything you're sharing, is this remembrance of, for those of us who are like, did it happen? Did it not happen? Is it science? Is it spirituality? To allow ourselves to be the bridge, the embodied bridge between those worlds, and to open up to the deeper transmission of these mythologies and of these ancient cultures and wisdoms. So thank you so much, Jocelyn.
Thank you for that, Tori. Yes, yes. I love that you said that the myths unlock the codes within us and the keys within us. It's so beautiful.
Next, I would love to hear if you can share with us about different texts and records of these precessional cycles, astronomy and astrology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to share some slides, which I think you have given me permission to do here. So I will put these up on the screen. And the reason that I share slides with this question in particular is that the imagery from ancient Egypt transports us. It's just so incredibly layered, all the symbolism that is included in every hieroglyphic image. So I invite you to take this in, not only hearing my description of it, but also see what it moves in you, right? There will be certain images that you'll just, you'll want to carry that with you for the rest of your life because of the depth of meaning that it might hold for you in particular. So enjoy. And I just love sharing the imagery from Egypt for all of those reasons. Okay, so the ancient Egyptians and the great precessional cycles. So I'm going to give you a little mini tour of 3 temples today, showing you some of the texts that are held in these temples that tell us about these vast cycles of time and show the mastery of the ancient Egyptians in their connection with the stars and the planets. So this is Esna Temple. And this is a temple where it has astrological ceilings and actually astronomical as well. It's very accurate astronomically. And the ceilings were covered in soot and dirt for many, many years, for thousands of years. And just in 2018, they began restoring them. And so they've finished the restoration and it is now visible in full color. It's just absolutely incredible. Now, this temple is dedicated to the Neteru, or the gods and goddesses of Egypt, who set creation into being. This is the goddess Neith and the god Khnum. And so let's just take a look. Now, the imagery is just so powerful. You know, I always wish we could just spend 10 minutes on each image, but we'll move through and you'll have the recording to come back to if you wish. So this ceiling, this section here is showing the waxing and waning of the moon. Now, in the Egyptian hieroglyphs, you're always going to read in the direction of pointing toward the people's faces. Okay, so this one is read from left to right, and this bottom line is read from right to left. So we have here the new moon, and there are 14 stages or 14 days from the new moon to as the moon waxes every month to get to the full moon. And I'll just point out specifically here on the 7th day, we have Osiris. And on the 8th day, we have his wife, Isis, right? Isis and Osiris being very, very key to the ancient Egyptian mythology. And they're at this turning point, this pivotal moment between the 7th and 8th day, right? Right at the center of the waxing moon cycle. And on the bottom here, a little bit of the right side is cut off, but this is going from the full moon down back to the new moon. And of course, after that, we would circle back around and go to the new moon to start the cycle again. So you can see how beautifully this is depicted, and the eye that is opening more and more and more as we wax toward the full moon is just so beautiful. So this is one of the cycles. There are always in these temples many, many, many layers of cycles are encoded, from the 26,000 year cycles or multiples of those all the way down to the daily cycle and everything in between. So the 28-day moon cycle being one of those. Now, in ancient Egypt, they did not only track the 12 zodiac signs, but they also tracked the 36 decans. Every decan is 10 degrees of the 360-degree arc of the sky. So every zodiac sign that we know today has 3 decans within it. So these decans were very important. They always paid attention to which decan is rising on the eastern horizon just before the sun, or which decan is at the apex of the sky in the center of the day or the midpoint of the night. And this information told them a lot about the energetics of what is happening on the earth, as above, so below. So this is just one of the decan images. It actually includes 2 decans, decans 30 and 31. And this is so beautiful. This is speaking of rebirth, and this is speaking of the soul traveling out to the immortal stars to the north. So this is a mummy, and the mummy is amidst the stars. Okay, the mummy is surrounded by stars. There are 7 stars above and 14 stars below. And this is incredibly powerful. These multiples of 7 indicate the constellations, such as the Pleiades, also the Big Dipper or Ursa Majora constellation. That one in particular was very connected with rebirth for the ancient Egyptians, because the Big Dipper, Ursa Majora, it has 7 stars. It's a very big, very clearly noticeable constellation, and that constellation never dips below the horizon as seen from the latitude of ancient Egypt. It is always in the sky every single night. And so that constellation was very important as far as being the immortal or the imperishable stars. And so it was connected with the immortality or the imperishability of the soul. So these groupings of 7 stars are very significant to show the infinite nature of the soul. Okay, so here, it's a little bit dark in this image, but I wanted to show this because up here in the top right, we have the constellation Orion, which is Osiris in the mythology, but Osiris in his Orion form is called Sa, S-A-H. So this is Sa here, and he is waving to Isis. Now she is in her form as the star Sirius. And so this is showing the constellation of Orion next to the star Sirius. And then down here, you will see that this is a very interesting bull with one, especially highlighting the bull's foreleg, surrounded by 7 stars. This is the Big Dipper. This is Ursa Majora constellation right here. So those were 2 very significant star configurations for ancient Egypt. I wanted to include this one just because it's so powerful. This is, you can see all the serpents. Look at all the serpents here. Now in Egypt, and I'll show this in different ways on other slides too, this serpentine life force energy, or we might call it the Kundalini energy, is very important. And this panel here of hieroglyphic images is showing the serpentine energies of the life force and the forces of nature coalescing at the original time of creation. Very powerful. So this is speaking of the great cycles. This is speaking of the beginning of time, which for ancient Egyptians was called Zep Tepi, the original time. Now, when they spoke of Zep Tepi, they were referring to the beginning of this cycle, which was the end of the age of Leo and beginning of the age of Cancer, but also the cycle 26,000 years before that, and also the cycle 26,000 years before that. In each of these cycles, we are born and we go through cycles within cycles, and we have a death, and then we are reborn again into the next cycle. So that was Esna Temple. And I want to also take you to Dendera. Now, Dendera is the temple of Hathor, the great mother. And I know probably many of you know of Hathor, maybe have a very close connection with her. And in Dendera Temple, the secrets of all time and space are held here. Dendera is one of these temple sites that we know that the temples below, right? The temples that were built here over time go back at least 8,000 years. So what is written here is very important to pay attention to. Okay, so this panel on the ceiling of Dendera Temple is one of the most important panels in all of ancient Egypt. I would venture to say, others might disagree, but that is my analysis of it. So this is showing Zep Tepi. This is showing the original time of creation. And this particular one is pointing to the end of the age of Leo and beginning of the age of Cancer, about 10 to 12,000 years ago. Now, this is the time when we were moving out of the age of Leo, when the great flood or the cataclysm occurred, and we're being rebirthed. We're starting anew. There's always so much detail that I have to focus in on certain small pieces of it. Basically, this is the rebirth of the sun at that time. The sun is shining its rays down, and what is emerging is the great mother, Hathor, she who births all things. It's no mistake that that is upside down from the other imagery, because the ancient Egyptians knew that what we see as reality may be completely different from what it is. We may be right side up, but we think we're upside down, or vice versa. So they reflected that in their art. Now, what's really significant here, one piece, is this serpent emerging from a lotus flower on a bark or a boat. This is showing the very first thing that happens at the cycle of, when the cycle of rebirth begins again, is that Kundalini life force energy is rising up out of the primordial waters. So the life force rises again. Even after the cataclysm, life comes back once again, rises out of the primordial waters, and then everything you see to the right of that is created. Now, part of what was created here is the Holy Family. This is the ancient Egyptian Holy Family. Here we have Sa, again, Orion or Osiris. And we have the Great Mother. This is Isis. This is Hathor. Isis, Hathor, and Nut were originally one in the original state of things. So this is Isis, but it is also Hathor, and it is shown as she is shown as the sacred cow. And then this is Horus, their child, and they're setting off on a new adventure here. They're starting again. Now this is important to show the goddess Nut, and she is everywhere in Dendera Temple. She is the celestial goddess or the celestial mother. Every evening at dusk, she eats the sun. The sun travels through her body all night long. And at dawn, she bursts the sun from her womb. And just as in the previous image, you can see where the sun rays are coming down, Hathor, the great mother, is born. Life is born again. The womb is restored. Now, this represents all of the cycles. This is showing us the 26,000 year cycles of life, death, and rebirth. It's showing us the daily cycle and everything in between. So these are the infinite cycles of life: birth, life, death, and rebirth. Here is a close-up image, and this is in the crypts underneath of Dendera Temple, showing that beautiful serpent, that life force energy rising out of the primordial waters of creation. And here's another image from the crypts below Dendera. This is not a light bulb, as some say. Okay, this is showing the process of how we must hold and establish harmony and balance in order for life to emerge once again. Now, this is really important for us to pay attention to right now in our world, because our world is very out of balance. So how do we ensure that we're able to enter into the next cycle, that we're able to reach this state of highest consciousness? We must bring things back into balance. And then I'll show you a few of the zodiac signs, because all 12 of the zodiac signs, and of course all 36 decans, are on the ceiling of Dendera, but here are just a few that you'll recognize. So here's Leo. So this is showing the zodiac sign of Leo. It's also showing the great age of Leo. And this is Virgo. So this is the female goddess, the female priestess figure, holding a shaft of grain, very much like Demeter, right, in the Greek mythology, holding the shafts of grain. So this is Virgo right here. And here's Libra. This is the scales. That one's really clear. And it has the newborn Horus, the newborn sun god here within the full moon. Very beautiful. So those are the scales of Libra. And then here is Scorpio. You can see that scorpion clearly. And here is Sagittarius. Really cool, right? And these are all along the ceilings of the first hypostyle hall when you entered Dendera Temple. Here's one more I wanted to show you because it's mirroring what we saw at Esna. This is the phases of the waxing moon. So there are 14 figures here, each of them representing one day of the moon moving from new moon to this beautiful full moon in the mirror being reflected, right? As the light of the sun reflects onto the surface of the moon so brightly at the full moon. And the god Thoth or Jehuti here honoring the full moon. Okay, let's go to one more temple. If we have time, Tori, I want to ask you if it's okay to continue with the slides. Okay, good.
Absolutely.
All right, wonderful. One more temple here, and this is Edfu Temple. So Edfu is the temple honoring Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris. Now, Edfu Temple is very significant because Edfu is the temple that is a reconstruction of the primordial mound from which life arose at the beginning of time. And I'll tell you a little more about why I say this. It is actually written in the Edfu building texts. So the Edfu building texts hold extremely ancient knowledge that was carried forward through countless millennia, telling of the arrival of the first Egyptians to this new land of Egypt. Where did they come from before that? Some would say Atlantis. There were certainly previous civilizations, because when Egypt comes onto, the scene here, they already have a fully developed civilization, right? So they didn't appear out of nowhere. So what came before? Historically, we don't know, but they came from somewhere. They were carrying the technology from somewhere. They were carrying the writing and the knowledge from somewhere. So this is the arrival of the Egyptians to this land, which they called Kem, which we today call Egypt, during Zeptepi. Now here is an image of the building text, and these are the tops of people's heads down here, which I actually kept in on purpose for reference so you can see. This is the lower panel, and then there's a middle panel and an upper panel, but this is not all. There's 3 levels here, but it goes so far down this massive wall and actually wraps around the outside of Edfu Temple. Is a very extensive text. So at first glance, these texts appear to simply tell the story of the building of Edfu Temple. But as this amazing researcher, who's a woman, E.A.E. Raymond of Manchester University, tells us, and she has done extensive research of every line of the building text, she says a closer look reveals at the existence of certain mythological events where the foundation, building, and bringing to life of the historical temple of Edfu is interpreted as happening in a mythical age. The historical temple is interpreted as the work of the gods themselves and as an entity of a mythical nature. So this seems to indicate a belief in a historical temple that was a direct continuation, projection, and reflection of a mythical temple that came into existence at the beginning of the world. And this is what makes Edfu very special and very mysterious. Now, in the building texts, the 7 sages, or the followers of Horus, which are called the Shemsu Hor, appear as the enlightened survivors of a cataclysm that wiped the earth clean and then set about making a fresh start at the dawn of the new age, which is called Zeptepi. And E.A.E. Redmond says the first era known by our principal sources was a period which started from what existed in the past. The general tone of the record seems to convey the view that an ancient world, having been constituted, was destroyed. And as a dead world, it came to be the basis of a new period of creation, which at first was the recreation and resurrection of what had once existed in the past. So this is speaking to these vast cycles of death and rebirth, but the specifics of how was Egypt first established. According to the Edfu text, the 7 sages and the other gods came originally from an island. The homeland of the primeval ones is exactly the wording in the building text. And so, as noted above, the texts are adamant that the agency that destroyed this island was a flood. They also tell us that it came to its end suddenly and that the majority of its divine inhabitants were drowned. Arriving in Egypt, those few who survived then became the builder gods. Very interesting, right? So here's another view of the building text. This is that corner that I showed you before. And this is if we look further down the line. This still doesn't show all of them. It just keeps on going. But just to show you how massive these are, and they wrap around the whole back of Edfu Temple. One more interesting thing I will point out is that there's a lot of boats. There are a lot of boats in Edfu, indicating that when all of this happened, it was amidst a watery world. Right. And so here's one image, for example. Here we have Horus on a boat, and he is combating the forces of chaos. This is Set in hippopotamus form here. We have Isis, Horus's mother, on the front of the boat, obviously assisting, and Horus is in this battle with chaos. Now, an interesting thing about the battle between Horus and Set is that neither one of them can ever win, because Horus is order and Set is chaos. Horus is highest consciousness and Set is destruction, but we need both sides of that polarity in order for our world to exist. So they are in an eternal battle in which neither of them can ever win, but both of them are needed and necessary. So I will pause there, and I hope that's been really interesting for everybody.
I am heart blown, mind blown. Thank you so much for taking us on that tour. And I can just feel in every slide, you could go into so much more detail. I feel so incredibly inspired, Jocelyn, and just so grateful to receive your wisdom. Thank you so much. And really deeply, deeply, deeply thanking and honoring these ancient ones and those who carved these temples, those who carried on these stories for us to understand what happened in our world even before the time that this temple was built. To be able to receive that ancient of a transmission is beyond special. And I'm wondering if you can share with us, to wrap up before you share about your incredible free offering, what did the ancient Egyptians have to say about the times that we're living in now?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I've shared a little bit of this already. The main thing that they share, whether you're looking at Dendera Temple and how they're showing us these 26,000-year cycles, or whether you're considering the Sphinx, which is facing exactly where the sun would have risen during the age of Leo, in the constellation of Leo on the eastern horizon in about 10,500 BC. Or if we consider the coordinates of the pyramids, the magnificent structures of the pyramids, right? There's so many different ways that they conveyed this, but they're saying, pay attention. You are living in a time of momentous opportunity and momentous change. And we must tune back in, right, to who we truly are, to these mysteries, to what we consider magic, and to them was just the way the world works. To them was a science and an art, right? Tuning back in to all that these ancient lineages, not just the ancient Egyptians, all of these lineages all around the world knew, and the mysteries that they held, the incredible connection with the cosmos, with the earth. And we're doing that now, right? Everybody here at this gathering is doing that now. So we are listening, we are paying attention, and we are remembering. And that is what is very most important to know from all of this.
Thank you. Thank you for being such a transmission carrier and a code carrier. And I'd love for you to share with us about your free offering. You have a video that's called Awaken Your Connection with Ancient Egypt that we'll be sharing with everyone here.
Yes. So this is even a deeper dive, if you would like to go on a deeper dive into Egypt. This is a beautiful video workshop that I've recorded where you will learn more about the mythology of Osiris and why this was so central to the understanding of reality of the ancient Egyptians. And also the goddess Ma'at. I have her actually right here behind me. The goddess Ma'at, who wears the ostrich feather on her head, and she stands for natural order and cosmic law, and why that is such an important facet of reality for us to look at now and tune into. And so, and so much more, but that's included in that workshop. There's also a shamanic journey at the end to visit a past life where you held this knowledge from the ancient times, and to see what more your soul knows than you even might know in this moment.
This sounds absolutely incredible. Jocelyn, thank you from the depths of me. This has been so profound, and the chat is blowing up with people filled with gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you so, so much for so generously sharing and taking us on a tour and I cannot wait to go to Egypt. I haven't been yet, but oh my gosh, just witnessing these photos of the temples even from far away is just you can feel them. I can only imagine what it's like to walk on those lands and the experiences that you've had. So thank you for bringing that here for us to drink from.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to share it. It just fills my heart with joy every time I get to share this. So thank you all for being here live, and thank you those for those watching later. I hope you have received so much. And thank you again, Tori, for holding space in such an amazing way and bringing us all together here.
Mm, thank you. And to everyone present, thank you so much for tuning in for this call. We have such an amazing lineup today. I want to tell you about a few of the people coming on because we actually have two new speakers that were just added yesterday that are happening today. Really exciting. First, she has already been on the lineup, but grandmother Two Clouds, Marza Millar. She is one of Isis's mentors. For those of you who tuned in yesterday with Isis Indria, she's an incredible grandma who was raised in the medicine ways, who comes from Ojibwe and Scottish descent, who has been carrying the stories of the prophecies since she was 17. They were handed down to her through the Hopi lineage and through her culture that she was raised in. She's going to be at 2 p.m. today, so come for some true grandma wisdom. She doesn't have anything planned. She's like, "Listen, Tori, I'm a channel. You need to understand this. We're just going to feel who's live and we're going to have a talk." And so she's just going to bring through so much wisdom. So that's at 2 p.m. with Grandmother Marza. And then we also have at 4 p.m. in the Sufi lineage of Rumi, we have an incredible sheikh who will be sharing the profound wisdom of the whirling dervishes, which I'm so excited for. So come at 4 p.m. He's a world-renowned speaker. His books have been translated all over the world. That's at 4 p.m. in the lineage of Rumi. And then at 6, we also have another call that was added, which is with Marin Vayu, who teaches the ancient wisdom of the 5 elements. He has such a profound way of speaking about it, and he actually received his initiations through the pyramids in Egypt. This is where he received these transmissions he'll be sharing with us, and he's also an incredible elder. So please come tune in for our new speakers today. And Jocelyn, my heart is full. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tori. Much love to everybody.
Much love, everyone. I'll see you all soon. Bye.